So hello everyone, this is the bi-weekly meeting of this storage special interest group. Today is November 23, 2016. We're holding the meeting a day early because tomorrow is Thanksgiving. Yay! All right, so taking a look at the agenda. Oh, as a reminder, this meeting is public and recorded, so be careful about what you say. Looking at the agenda, we have a few items. If anybody has anything else they want to talk about, feel free to add it to the agenda. First up, we have Scott Carilli talking about enhanced error resolution hints. Scott, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so basically this came up at KubeCon. I was talking with Michael. This is something that I've had a few ideas about this and a couple PRs that I've put out there, and basically I think everyone likes the idea of kind of enhancing our error resolution and getting to root cause and helping users, but I don't think my implementations have been very doable. So talking with Michael at KubeCon, he mentioned that he and Brad Childs have kind of been tossing some ideas around about how to, better handle this in the future. And so he asked that we put this on the agenda, but that's really all the info I have on that. I think Michael
I'm here.
and Brad.
Can anyone hear me?
There you are, Michael.
Sorry that I was a second late. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
Is this Screely?
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad that you could make it. Do we have a lot of people or just a few people because of the holidays?
We got quite a few.
Oh,
We
wonderful.
got 26 people.
Holy moly.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, Saad, you working through the agenda or did Screely?
Yeah, we just got started. So first on the agenda was Scott Carilli's item about the enhanced error resolution hints.
Yes.
He just gave an intro, and that was a perfect segue to you, actually. So if you'd like to say anything about that.
Okay. So there's a few things going on. One of them is Aaron Boyd, Brad, Scott, Rajat, this guy named Saad. It seems like we're all converging on some areas of places inside the storage environment that needs to be possibly strengthened or deserve attention. And I know at least in Google, this is going to be a large part of our roadmap for next year. It's funny to me how at KubeCon, so many people were looking at different pieces of this. I don't know how many people read, I sent out an email to the storage SIG about last week that I didn't have a good name. I just called it like plugin freedom or storage freedom or something silly and, uberly patriotic. The idea is that to improve the usability and diagnosability of what we're doing when we have a plugin today. Basically, if you read the few paragraphs, the idea is that, we have these issues where every node, every storage plugin has a set of node requirements, and these requirements are sometimes arcane, and they can involve kernel dependencies almost always, because they often go through the mount system call. And they may also involve other things like, having fuse daemons set up or very, very complex set of user packages. And what we want to be able to do is a few things at once. We want to be able to have very simple and easy and early error messages for our users. And I think this is why I was talking to Scott, because it looks like it is Scott, right? Correct, Creeley?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
It sounds like he's already been thinking about some of these issues before and it wasn't getting the proper attention. I also know that Rajat has also been working on some of these issues himself. Because, what's happening is we sort of have 4 or 5 different groups that come together for storage plugins. We have the storage administrator. We have the person running the application, who really starts off the whole thing. We have the cluster administrator. And then we have the people who are administering Kubernetes. And the cluster administrator I call out here because these are the people who will be making decisions of what sort of images that they run on the nodes. I think in a cloud provider, it's often the same person as the Kubernetes operator. But in other installations, it may not be the case. And that's a lot of places for your storage plugin to not work. It could not be working because of binary incompatibility. It could not be working because of an image incompatibility. It could not be working because it can't reach the storage itself. So to me, it seems like we need to have some mechanism to have increased intelligence of making sure that that node is actually meets the requirements for that plugin, and then being able to integrate that with scheduling so that when the application user says, I want to run NFS or Cephalopod or Cucamonga plugin, it will know ahead of time which nodes can support it or not. And in addition, some of the things that came up at the SIG was that this will probably get even more complicated for some providers because it could be heterogeneous, where some nodes support some things and some don't. And it may be dynamic. If you have fiber channel, in which case your storage, let's say meeting the storage requirement on the node could be something that comes in and comes out, well, you know, after you've set up your cluster, then it becomes even more interesting. So I put out a couple paragraph idea of something that I was talking about because I really want to give kudos to Brad, because I had some simpler ideas, and he really sort of shook me the first night at KubeCon and said, Ruben, that isn't going to work. Life's more complicated than that. And I'm like, wow, you're right. And started taking his ideas and talked to Erin also about what she found as, you know, important signals to give the user. And then sort of shopped some of those ideas around to David Oppenheimer and to Don Chen in both scheduling and node. I'm sorry, I was up late with the turkey. And kind of came up with the inkling of an idea that I think that a lot of us, that sort of covers, I don't want to make it panacea software, which is something that, you know, solves everyone's problems at once. I don't think this is going to do that, but I think it's a big sort of step in the right direction with something that we can break down into 2 or 3 sub-projects, and I think is doable by the end of next year. And it also aligns with how Kubernetes works overall. You know, basically the idea is coming up with facilities to have a daemon set that you can run that will allow plugin, you know, when you write a new storage plugin, you'll write a little module that says, is this node compatible or not? And it can do a whole bunch of steps. And if it is, then it will advertise this to the scheduler. And then we can sort of, you know, come up with a more standard way of making sure that this system is a bit more robust. It may add a little bit more requirement to a storage plugin user, but at the same point, I think that we can make it optional. And I believe that it's sort of something that a storage plugin author should be thinking about anyway. Because, you know, right now we're sort of throwing this complexity on our users, and we're not even making it clear which users need to worry about it.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, that Google Doc or whatever you have, do you have that?
Yeah, it's actually just an email right now. I'm hoping that
I just posted a link in the chat window to the storage SIG, so the thread's in there.
Yeah, it's not much more than what you kind of heard in my head already, except it's written down. And it's something that I think, you know, I know Erin, I talked to her about it yesterday. She's interested also in contributing to this. And I am looking to Saad and the team of storage folks in Google to start making progress on this in Q1. So I'm hoping that we see a real proposal that we can all start commenting on in January. Surprise, Saad.
I'm excited about this. I think this is something we've needed for a while. And now that we've got a lot of stabilization work done and out of the way, a lot of the testing work out of the way, I think this is a great next challenge. Steve, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I'm so aware of the combos. You know, it makes total sense.
Cool. Brad?
Sorry, searching front from you. No, I think this is a great step forward for, you know, like the general stability of the entire volume framework. So I'm excited.
Cool. So this is a good segue into the next topic, which was the original topic of discussion that led to this. What are we doing with in-tree, out-of-tree plugins? What's going on with Flex for 1.6? So I know Brad, Steve, and Michael were talking about this a little bit on that thread and at KubeCon. Do any of you want to add to that?
Is Chakri here?
No. This is Gopal. Chakri is on vacation, so he'll be back in 2 weeks.
So
yeah, Gopal, or I don't know if Gopal wants to start.
So I saw basically Steve Watt's summary, and I think, to me, what it means like, what it looks like, the decision is to basically, until this long-term plan is hashed out, we basically go and try and get into 1.6 flex volume with basically still the exec model, but get dynamic provisioning in so that it unblocks some of the current folks who are waiting on that functionality and the work which has been already put in. So we are going to basically do that and hopefully try and get it early for review well before the 1.6. Now coming over to whatever you guys are calling plugin freedom and what to do and what that proposal will look like, I think hopefully a lot of the discussions which went on, which basically Chakri presented, there were a list of issues which were brought up by Storage SIG. So either he or I will update his current spec with those. So hopefully those are kept in mind when the new CVI or storage plugin framework rework is basically done.
Yeah. Also, Gopal, I see all of the mess of stuff I just described as something orthogonal to whether or not the API for Flex or Flex 2. I think those are two almost unrelated efforts to some degree.
Okay.
So I don't think one needs to block the other.
Correct. But I don't. So what is not clear is how you starting off this Flex 2 effort and how we can help, right? So at least basically we have closure on V1 of what things need to be done, and hopefully we get that done. So what the time frame and what all other stuff do we need to do to help to get version 2 off the ground?
That's a really good question. So Steve Watt, you've talked about being really interested in making progress on this, and that are you, like, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I would say like the note I sent to the thread to the list was after a couple of, I had to step out at 3:00 to change hotels, unfortunately. And so I think there was like some conversation between 3 to say 4 or 5 p.m. that I wanted to clarify, and just to sort of summarize it, and it was what I sort of put in the thread, which was, hey, this Flex version 2 stuff is going to take a while to develop. So that's the one thing. 2, we want to move all the volume out of tree. So like, what do we do between now and like when Flex version 2 is available? And, I thought one of the decisions that we arrived on, which it was more of a question I'm asking, I thought, could you clarify, which was that we were going to add attach detach support to Flex V1, and Chakri was going to be on point with that. And so that folks who wanted to move out of tree in the near term could use the Flex V1 support in Q1.6 to do that. And then, so that was sort of the one thing I wanted to clarify. Maybe I should just pause there. Is that sort of the general consensus?
From what I've heard, yes. Yeah, I agree. From what I've heard, attach, detach, and dynamic provisioning were proposed as being part of what we're calling Flex V1. One thing I would add is we should be cautious about calling it V1. Whatever version we're going to ship with 1.6 should be something we call Alpha 2 or maybe a beta. We don't want to get into the business of calling it something with a label where we are guaranteeing an API. I don't think we're there.
You want to call it just 0.5 and leave it at that?
0.5. Throw the name Alpha in there and I'll be happy, because Alpha has very, very specific connotations.
Really? I always feel like in Kubernetes, I never understand what alpha and beta mean.
Oh, it's defined. There's a page that defines it.
I've read the definition, and then I've watched people debate it anyway. So I don't know what the SIG feels.
Thoughts, people?
Well, just to clarify, like there's Flex, there's an iteration and an improvement on the Flex that we have today. like we need to come up with a name for that thing. And then there's like what we're talking about, like the flex of tomorrow, which, you know, one word we were using was maybe CVI or something to that effect for that thing. I just want to, because both things are sort of flex, like we need a way to like simplify the conversation.
So I think this is a way to look at it, Steve, that may actually address your other needs too, that I think you talked about in some of the hallway conversations. Like, let's separate like the CVI thing a little bit even more, the CVI idea from the idea of flex. Like for Kubernetes, for storage, for the storage SIG, let's have like some flex that's half finished, and we broadcast that we're going to use to get us through the immediate, you know, needs for out of tree, and we can start working on that and figuring that out. And then a more finished flex API. And whether let's call the second one 1.0, and the first one we can call alpha or 0.5 or Beaufort or who cares what. Or other people may care. I'm sorry. I don't know if I care that much. But let's call like whatever the CVI thing is, like we can basically, we can even decouple that a little bit and just say, whatever we're doing for Flex 1.0, we can cut and paste it or copy and paste it and say that's CVI. And whenever we make changes to it, just say, hey, look, these are our ideas for CVI, because I still look at CVI at the moment as almost more of a working group and more of a sharing of ideas with other cloud orchestration solutions.
Yeah, I agree. I think that CVI needs to be decoupled from Flex. We're planning right now a proposal to do a lib storage version of CVI that is not going to be Flex based. So I think decoupling those is important.
Have you guys been talking to Cloud Foundry and people like that?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And
who do you talk to over there, if you don't mind me asking?
Those as well. Clint isn't on the call today. He's the one who's been handling it, so we don't have a name, but he would.
Okay. So we've been I think we've been open, at least on the Google side, that whenever we talk to these folks, we throw things on the SIG and we throw what we're talking about and giving updates to it. I kind of encourage you to do that too, just so that we're all on the same page and we know if we're duplicating effort and things like that.
Okay. The trouble is it crosses all of these different projects, Cloud Foundry, Mesos, and it becomes quite a bit of work to go update whatever mechanisms they have on all of these. Working.
You may be overthinking it, or maybe I'm thinking for more than I may be implying, which is just, hey, I, Steve Wong, and some buds, we met and talked with, these folks, and these were what they were thinking, and these were what we were thinking, and it's just sort of a conversation and a heads up than anything like official at this point.
Yeah. So our public visibility mechanism is our Slack community, which has a couple thousand members. So there's ongoing chats, channels in there on lib storage, and in addition to the GitHub repository for lib storage. So that's where that stuff is visible today.
So, but what I found with Slack in general, it's like that Matrix, remember the movie The Matrix, when you get those streams of code flying by?
Yeah, you're right. And, Google doesn't go in there and search it, but
I mean, I'm not saying it has to be Google that searches it, but even if I was reading it, I mean, it's hard to know unless you're like reading that constantly, what's going on.
Right.
Maybe like even a monthly or, a periodic, oh, look, something cool happened. Here's sort of where we are now.
Okay.
You don't have to. I'm just saying maybe it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand the ask. It just, getting it addressed in the near term is probably something beyond my personal capabilities, but I'll mention it to the whole team.
Okay, I just meant like, I thought if you're reading this Slack channel, what keeps you from just writing like 3 paragraphs to the SIG storage list, next week?
You're right. I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, that's all. It's like low energy.
Okay.
So getting back to the topic of what is going to look like in 1.6. I think we agree that it should have dynamic provisioning and a Thatcher interface. There's some question about exactly what we want to call it. We can hash that out later. Any other comments on Flex or out of tree?
Just for the API proposal, the Flex API proposal, would that be something possible in 1.6? We are not talking about the implementation, just the API proposal.
So I'm curious, who's going to be driving it a little bit? I think we're all talking about, it would be really cool to have it. Who's got cycles and the interest in working on it? I know that I do feel that Saad and I and some people and Tim can probably start looking at it in January more actively than we have been. It feels like for the alpha version of Flex or the 0.5 version, it looks like Gopal and Chakri are sort of driving that and working on the detach and attach stuff. For the more finished version, one of the things it sounds like we may want to start thinking about with the storage SIG in general is sort of breaking down into working groups a little bit, where we have people who are actively pushing and focusing on things, as opposed to where I think we're all sort of talking about, wouldn't it be nice?
So I don't want to take the work away from Chakri. I kind of feel like if this is something that he wants to continue to own, like he should, he has kind of first rights to it. If nobody's willing to take it, or if it's too much of a burden, I definitely think it's something that, we'd be willing to pick up. There's some, some tie-in with containerized mount and some other stuff that we might trickle into it. But if it's out there on the table.
I'm not sure if containerized mount needs to be part of that API. That'd be something neat to discuss.
Okay.
Serge Pachenko from Cluster HQ. So I can work with Chakri on driving that.
Well, it sounds like what we need to do is maybe just sort of engage with Chakri, next week and say, let's start working on this, and then have updates to the SIG every 2 weeks.
We'll do that.
And people are interested, it sounds like, are Chakri, Sergey, I apologize.
Serge.
Brad, you're interested in this too, it sounds like?
Yep.
Yeah, and Mohammed from IBM as well. I'm already interested, and I had a couple of discussions with Chakri, and we are ready to contribute as well.
So maybe can someone send mail to the SIG or Gopal? Do you want to reach out to Chakri and have him, maybe start setting up either through email or the proposal or something to keep this going forward and not lose what we've got?
We'll do. So the first thing which we'll do, which I think, we haven't done, is basically update the proposal with okay, what are the blockers? Some of the questions which we did not answer, and basically maybe divvy it up among the folks, and at least basically have broader audiences look through it and break it down, right? So. I'll have him basically update that and then start up to gather people to basically work on that. But like I said, Chakri is out of the country. He just he hasn't had a vacation in 2 years, so he's available via email, but he's out for the next 3 weeks.
Oh well, that's not good.
Yeah.
So. Brad, do you want to start taking point on this then, or?
Yep. I'll take it. I'll start a thread, start the conversation, and once he returns, I'll defer back to him if he wants to.
Yeah, it isn't cool because he has spent a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. I think he likes it. I don't want to, just take it away from him with the exact, say, if he needs backup, we're here to back him up and help.
Thank you.
Just want to get some ideas. Are we going to have this APIs proposal merged in 1.6, or just continue the discussion?
I think we should shoot for getting that proposal in 1.6.
All right, thanks.
It feels like from the SIG face-to-face, please, someone tell me if they think I'm crazy on any of this stuff. But it felt like we had Chakri kind of walk through something that was 85 or 90% complete there.
I agree with that.
So, I don't know, Steve, what do you feel? Or were you there for that, or?
Just a quick summary. So Sergi is there, and Brad and I was there. So my feeling is that there's a wide range of unfamiliarity with the API proposal. So I would suggest people just look at the API, break comments over there, and we start from there. But then another feeling is that there's no exhaustive inputs that we can take for the version 1. Let's just say the API version 1. So it wouldn't be realistic to have everything covered. So we probably can have a version delivery and going forward because we don't have every functionality yet. So as long as we feel comfortable this can be delivered for 1.7 going forward, then we should get the API approved. And
are you saying, Wallman, that some of the goals of the final product for Flex Volume aren't possible yet? That there's changes that we need to do for, I don't know, node info or something to that effect to even arrive at that point. So it's not possible to maybe design around some of these things yet. Is that your point?
The point is that we don't really have every features covered. For example, we don't have snapshots and we don't have the quota. So it's unrealistic to have everything defined in 1.6, the API.
I have a feeling we're actually talking about several deliverables here in different timeframes. And if we're talking about just dynamic provisioning, attach and mount, I think that's pretty close to be done.
Just for the API, right?
Well, my understanding is that Chakri basically has working code.
Yeah, he actually, so in 1.4, Mikhail was actually working on a PR. I'll paste it into the chat window. That was actually pretty close to what the API proposes. It included attach, detach, and I believe it also included the dynamic provisioning. I have to verify that. It might not have actually included dynamic provisioning. But it was a very solid PR. It was a very good refactor. One of the problems with it was a huge breaking change. A lot of people already depend on Flex. This would break it. And there were a few big open design issue questions that weren't resolved. And we were unsure if we were willing to merge that, break the Flex API, and then come back, iterate on it again, and break the API again. And it sounds like we still, even if we come up with some API that we're happy with at the moment, there's going to be questions about, well, how do we add in snapshot support, or if we want to tweak the API somehow, do we have the ability to do that? And that's why I'd caution against calling this V1. We want to make sure that we maintain the flexibility of being able to modify the API in future iterations. But at the same time, we don't want to iterate so often that we're breaking the API every milestone and people can't develop plugins against Flex. So it's a trade-off.
So we definitely want to stabilize the 1 dot whatever that's coming out.
Yeah.
We talked a lot of future features that aren't implemented in any volume code, like snapshotting, and we kind of lump that into like the next version of Flex and how that would be handled. I don't think we will want to address that in any shape or form on the first draft of the design doc. We'd probably want to keep it something realizable, and then just iterate on that as features come into play, right? I mean, I think we spent like 3/4 of the time on the second iteration of Flex plugin talking about features that don't even exist in the volume framework yet, how we would add them. So there may not be a whole lot in the second iteration of this until we have snapshotting, and some of the other media things that we talked about.
I think the base.
Brad.
Sorry, what was that, Michael?
I just agree with Brad.
Okay, awesome. All right, we can table this discussion and take it to a thread. Everybody agree, or is there a big open question?
Just to make sure the action item is clear, while Chakri is out, Brad, Gopal, can you make sure to work with Brad and so that Chakri isn't left in the dust, and you guys can start working on this today or tomorrow. I think we should be careful that for folks who are going to get involved in this, please be people who are contributing as opposed to just people who are interested and trust that the team will communicate pretty transparently and pretty quickly. And so we don't end up with like 90 people who are like, I'm interested in the new API. But Brad, you're going to go forth and conquer?
Yes, but I'm probably not going to do it tomorrow. I'll be fat on turkey. So
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, definitely will do.
One question, what I'd like to understand a bit more, timeframes. Because we lumped a whole bunch of stuff in this discussion. So CVI, what is time frame for that? And
I don't see a time frame for CVI. I see CVI is going to probably be, you know, a set of long-term discussions that will be happening. It seems like on many different forums between Cloud Foundry, Mesos, and Kubernetes. You know, Tim and I have talked to 2 representatives from that team already, and it sounds like the EMC folks are also talking to them on the same score. So I don't see anything urgent about that time frame. If anyone does, please, you know, pipe up now. And I think for Flex point something or Alpha, that does seems like something we should be putting the pedal to. And actually, Steve Watt, please chime in because you just said something cool.
Yeah, I'm just saying the only known time frame that there's consensus around is for adding attach detach to the current Flex volume plugin, which is Cube 1.6.
Yes.
That's the only known one.
Okay, great. Understood, and that's perfect for me.
So by 1.6, I have a question. So by 1.6, if I have a native volume plugin, what's, you know, what should I do? Should I wait for Flex, or are we still putting in entry source code?
I would encourage it to go. I would actually encourage you to bring it through Flex and help us figure out what requirements and what gaps we have.
I don't know about that, Brad. I'm not sure about that because Flex is not at the point where we can start advertising it as something that is production ready. It doesn't have the same level of testing, and it just has basic issues, things like how do you deploy when you don't control the master, right? So for those reasons, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, keep going.
I mean, for those reasons, my feeling is that if folks are want a production-ready volume for storage that will work in the most number of places, entry is still the best way to go.
Yeah, not only that, but you know, our existing lib storage proposal does have dynamic provisioning and attach detach already. So if we were to force it through the existing Flex, we've got no way to do that.
So here's my takeaway right now. When people ask me about this stuff, and I'm curious what other people think, I believe that Kubernetes, especially from KubeCon, my impression is it's pretty successful. There's a lot of interest in it, and there's a lot of belief that you know, this is something that a lot of vendors want to be able to include their functionality inside storage. At the same time, I also feel that it's almost faster than the infrastructure has been able to handle. And if we look at it now, I see sort of 2 angles here, which is why I'm very comfortable there's 2 tracks and maybe even 2 working groups that we'll be dealing with in 2017. One of them is how the heck do we make sure that we have, you know, a diagnosable mechanism to, you know, make this easier on the users. And then the other one is how do we make things easier for the vendors? I feel that there's probably going to have to be some, I wish in my mind we could say, hey, vendors, we have a great solution that will let you integrate now and iterate at your own speeds. And we're ready to go. But I'm not sure that we're there yet. And I also think that it's so important to get this right because we've seen, you know, everyone keeps telling me about, what's that other open source project that, you know, became really unruly to some degree. Cloud Open or Stack Open or OpenStack, where, you know, it got a little, you know, it didn't focus enough on the user experience. So we are, you know, we may have a bit of a frustrating first half of the year for integrating things out of tree, but I'm hoping that it pays off. And I think that we need to make sure that we stay honest with ourselves, get the proposal in 1.6, and then implement it, you know, as soon as we can, so that we can start migrating storage plugins in 1.7 or 1.8. But I right now, from the discussions that I'm seeing, it feels like it's worth taking this time. I'm curious, does anyone else think of that? I mean, am I crazy or?
Well, I'm just trying to parse the message that we would tell somebody, like, so I'm just trying to rationalize it all. So we're saying, what, as an example, like for folks, if they wanted, I know Vladimir is very motivated to try and get something out by Cube 1.6, for example. Like with, say, the external provisioner proposal, there was a external NFS provisioner that was developed. And so like one thing we could say is, hey, if folks are interested in building something out of tree today, they could take that same approach with the work Chakri's doing on Flex for 1.6, and they could have a Flex volume ready to go that would work with Cube 1.6. But it seems like, Saad, you're saying, hey, that's okay, provided you don't want to, support that thing. Is that right?
Yeah, because my fear is that whatever version of Flex, whatever iteration of Flex we come up with in 1.6 will not be final. We're going to make breaking changes to it at some point. And when that happens, if people have developed volume plugins against that, they're going to be in a very bad state. Versus the volumes that are in tree, what we've been doing is whenever we make a breaking change, we go in and we modify those volumes and make sure that they're working with the current version. So until we're pretty darn sure that whatever version of Flex we ship is quote unquote production ready, we should be cautious before suggesting that vendors start using it as the primary mechanism for developing volume plugins.
Do we think there's a lot of vendors who are not in the storage SIG in this position? Like if we put this stuff out there, we'll have a ton of upset people? Or that most of them are in this room and aware of the nuances? I'm just kind of curious.
That's a good question.
It's hard to know. Like, for example, Diamante were the only Flex volume implementation folks that I was aware of. And then in our face-to-face in San Jose, we had Dayterra and I think someone else, Portworx, that popped up on the radar. And the nature of Flex, we can't really track it in the community because they develop it outside of the community. So hard to know.
I actually happen to, just through personal connections, have a lot of friends at Portworx. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure this affects them that much anyway. I think they kind of have their own way of integrating with Kubernetes and container storage. But
I think the key point is that while right now there might not be too many folks that are dependent on Flex and we can break it in 1.6, no big deal. If after that point we start saying actually Flex is the way to do volume plugins and then we go and break it, that's going to be pretty bad.
Well, I can tell you as a vendor being potentially affected by that, as long as there is a fair warning.
Yeah.
As long as there is a open communication channel that I can follow and know in advance, and yes, it's a bit of extra work for me, but I'm fine with that.
But it's not just vendors, right? It's end users. So if I'm a user and I'm on version 1.7, and now I have to be aware of what version of the Flex driver I'm using and things like that.
That's going to be true anyway as soon as we go.
It's just something that we need to be very cautious about instead of just rushing into it.
I think this is the price that we pay for wanting to do in tree without waiting until like 2018.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a price that's worth paying.
You mean wanting to do out of tree, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, out of tree. I apologize. Again, that turkey.
So my other concern is that I'm not sure the exec base model is what we're going to be doing long term. So if we decide that CVI or whatever we're calling it is going to be the true out of tree way of doing things,
Flex 1.0, you mean, right?
Right, or whatever we're going to call it, like the final version of the out of tree. That's what we want people to actually develop against, and we tell people whatever we ship in 1.6, rewrite your volume plugins against that. And then whenever we ship that, they have to rewrite their plugins.
There's going to have to be a release or two releases where we overlap support for both. We deprecate one, then we turn on the other.
I was going to say, it's probably a year that we have to do that, right? I mean, that's the standard API deprecation period for Kubernetes.
I think Kubernetes, I thought, well, it depends if it's an API thing or if it's a release support thing. I've seen the game played both ways. It's either 2 releases, which means 6 months, or I've never yet seen the API deprecated. I think the closest I've seen yet myself is the recycler going away, which we never...
Yeah, it's verbally deprecated. It's never, like, physically taken out, right?
Yeah. So
and what's the harm if we have both in there at the same time anyways? I mean, if we had Flex 1 and Flex 2 running side by side, that might not be a horrible thing for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think for 6 months, that's where we're going to be, and then we pull it out. And,
So
if we also pull it out in such a way that when it doesn't work, we point out to people, hey, this is, it's not like a mount failure that's impossible to debug, but it's something that's a very clear signal of, we give everyone heads up, this is going away, and then when it does, it's not, they fall flat on their face. It's, oh, look, this plugin doesn't work anymore. If anyone has actually got, anyone at this level who's just putting on a new version without qualifying it anyway, and, I think we're overthinking it.
I agree.
Right. So in regards to like lib storage as a possible exemplar for the flex pattern, I was kind of hoping that the complexity and the features of that would help drive the features that we're expecting for version 1 and version 2, right? Like we don't have like a solid what we're hooking this into, and lib storage happens to be like a fairly complicated, pretty cool piece of code that we could use to vet this. There was a piece of me hoping that we could work with this in parallel to try to get it in as part of 1.6 and kind of treat it as a pet.
Are we people constrained? I mean, that's the thing.
Well, I know there's people on the MC side that are actively working on the plugin. I have resources that can work on the flex storage side of it, and Shakri is doing some work on it. So it sounds like we have 4 to 6 people that are.
Well, wait, aren't those people also working on the there's 2 flex solutions, right? I'm sorry, now you got me confused. And also, I really want to make sure that we spend the last 10 minutes talking about the NFS wedging too. That we don't have this issue eat up everything, because that seems like something we really need to get off our tuchus for 1.6.
And there is the broader thing, right? We have folks right now, like Vladimir, who's got a PR in flight and is continuing to rebase it. So like if, that was sort of one of the motivations, right? So like if we're making a decision where stuff that's not yet merged needs to go out of tree, then the folks that are continually rebasing stuff should be told so that they're not feel like they're just in hamster wheel,
Yeah.
Yeah, so do we want to make a call right here saying what our recommendation is going to be for the immediate term, whether folks should continue to develop in-tree plugins or not?
You mean for new ones or for the ones that are existing already?
For new plugins or plugins that are pending and haven't been merged yet.
Which ones do we have outstanding that are outside of lib storage? And also, is there something else like OpenSD that also came out of EMC recently?
OpenSDS. It's not out of EMC, it's out of Huawei.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, they reached out to us about that. They want to talk about it. I'm not sure if I want to pay for someone to travel. But anyways, I'd be keen on trading notes on that at some point if you're interested.
All right.
Yeah, hi, this is Simon from StorageOS. We're really interested in this question as well. I mean, we're sort of halfway through our integration, doing an in-tree plugin. We kind of felt that was the best way to go based on the face-to-face discussion. Clearly if Flex Volume is going to remain alpha for a while, then it's kind of difficult for us. We'd like to help out however we can, but we would really like some steer on whether in-tree is still the right way to go.
I think in-tree is probably going to be the thing that we recommend to people until the proposal is complete.
Okay, great.
If I was a vendor, regardless of anything anyone in this room said, I think that's what I would do. I'm curious what other people, inside the room think. But, if everyone told me, yeah, look, Flex is coming, we should have a proposal out in 1.6, but the proposal isn't done yet. And there's a group that's, really getting the last bit of it home to the touchdown line. It's kind of ugly in that we're sort of saying in-tree for now, even though it's got a higher bar, and then watch Flex, and you're probably going to have to support 2 yourself for a little bit so that when it comes, you want to be maybe one of the first people integrating to it. so that you're involved and you're ready.
Exactly. We'd like to get a bit more involved in helping out with the flex volume as well. Be a bit more proactive with that.
So functionally, 1.6 Flex will have all the features of in-tree plugins capable. We'll have attach, detach, mount, on mount. The proposal that we're talking about is the second iteration of it. You're kind of getting a little bit forward-looking features that we haven't totally fleshed out yet. So I feel like we're going to have something that's usable and an API that could be integrated with, for sure, in 1.6. We pretty much committed to that. I can't imagine us merging in-tree volume plugins before 1.6. You know what I mean?
I think Michael's point was, if you are a vendor who is developing a plugin, do you want to take the gamble and hope that everything that we are promising for 1.6 for Flex lands as expected or not? And I think he's right. As a vendor, you kind of have to make that decision on your own. And I agree with him. If I was a vendor, I would probably go with the tried and true solution rather than gamble.
I would do both. I would do exactly what I think someone from Storage OS just said, which is watch the new things that Brad's working on with Chakri really tightly, and shepherd that along and kick it as you go, and then also still invest in the in-tree stuff at the same time, which is going to just teach you more about Kubernetes anyway.
I agree.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
I feel like whatever we say, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think it has to do with the fact that we are in transition here as we move from the way that we currently manage plugins and where we want to manage plugins.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, it's tricky. There are various tensions pulling us this way and that way. And a very reasonable compromise in the near term, Can
we talk about NFS?
All right. Yes, that's the next item on the agenda. Let me paste it into the chat window. This is an issue that has existed for quite a while. The problem is that when an NFS server goes down, it can cause kubelet to hang. And the reason is because kubelet will go out and do a stat on the directory that was mounted for NFS, and the kernel just hangs indefinitely while the NFS server, the kernel hangs indefinitely while the server is down. In 1.3, we did a major rewrite where we isolated all the volume plugins from the primary kubelet path, so that if there was an issue in the mount, unmount, or any of these paths for a particular volume, it only affected that particular pod. It doesn't affect all of kubelet. However, we re-added code to the primary kubelet sync loop, which is responsible for deleting orphaned pod directories to make sure that we're cleaning up stray directories. And this code goes in and it stats the volume directories to figure out whether they're mounted or not, because we definitely do not want to get into the business of deleting content while it's still mounted. And that, again, puts this path on the primary kubelet sync path. It can block indefinitely, basically. If it hits an NFS volume that is the server is down, it will block kubelet indefinitely, and kubelet needs to be restarted. Some of the folks at Red Hat put out a fix for this. They modified it so that this path was not doing a stat, but it was just doing a readdir to get the file names for that directory. And then we broke that, we being me and Jing at Google, because we added in code to actually verify that directory is mounted or not.
Yeah, one of the things I talked to Paul about at KubeCon was how fragile is the fix? How do we, if we put this in, how do we make sure that we don't stat in the future, or someone else?
Yeah. So like any other bug, and this is something that Aaron and I have been hammering over and over again for the last quarter, is every fix we do should have an E2E test or an integration test or unit test verifying it. In this particular case, when we quote unquote fix the NFS wedge issue, we should have had a test which basically brought up a server, did a mount, tore down the server, and made sure that kubelet was responsive and that things could move along normally.
Yeah, almighty Red Hat people.
Or Michael, just real quickly, this is Jeff at Red Hat. I am writing an EPE test for this right now as we're speaking.
Sweet. So, we still want to get this fixed. Jing and I have been talking very quickly about if there's anything we can do for 1.5. We may be able to revert to a read directory solution and not verify whether mounts are whether the directories are mounted, because we may not need that. That's still a solution that we're discussing at the moment. If we have something, we'll update the thread. Otherwise, speaking with Tim Hawkins, it looks like the solution for this is going to be a bigger refactor to ensure that when the primary kubelet thread spawns off any process that can potentially block, like stat, that it gets spawned off on a separate thread, and that's non-blocking, and it times out and things like that. That's a bigger rewrite. We'll see if we can get a quicker fix in for 1.5. It may or may not be possible. We'll keep you updated.
No, we'll get something in 1.5 dot something, right? Just maybe not 1.5.0.
We might be able to get it into 1.5.0. So 1.5.0 is going out in 2 weeks. Jing, of course, as awesome as she is, has a proposed PR out. I'm taking a look at that and seeing if it's feasible or not.
Is there any other storage related issues for 1.5? You guys have any other blockers?
So, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
My question is, like, we don't have a ton of NFS expertise over here. Is there any way that we can, come up with some net or detector for any sort of access of the NFS storage that would, cause these lockups when the storage is down, so that we can almost like have a, some way of detecting when people add in code that might trip this in the future? Because we're going to do it. I mean, the moment we set this up to be clean, it got dirty again. And I think that that's all I got.
Just one other comment. The volume code is really complicated. It's getting complicated nowadays, and it's really appreciated if Jing and Saad can give us an overview or some kind of overview, and like a YouTube, so we can understand what is going on. So when we touch this code, we know this is a sensitive stuff, and we should pay special attention.
That is
otherwise, we probably just mess up around, fix certain issues, and causing another.
So this is true of two ways, I think. One is that not only is the code in on the node complicated, but the storage area complicated, but also I think NFS is complicated for us. And so it might be good in both directions to have like an NFS primer that, it doesn't even have to be a video. If anyone ever wanted to just either come and talk to us or give us like a GVC or anything, that would be really, really helpful, I think, for at least us in Google and maybe other people on the SIG. And then the other one is, I think you're absolutely right, Wamin, and I think that we should do something like that. And, Saad's been kicking around some ideas, and we should probably do something even more in depth.
Can I ask you on this particular issue, are you convinced that this is entirely within the confines of NFS, or could this be going on with other forms?
It could potentially happen for other storage plugins. NFS is the only one that we've run into or we've seen public complaints about.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Because we think we might be seeing something like this with our libstorage plugin.
Okay.
Probably just want to steal moments from this topic. So we have been talking about the mount options and the file system mount options. If we apply a proper mount options, maybe we can just avoid this problem at all. It's not really like an ideal solution, but could it be a workaround?
Yeah, no, that's a possibility. We could modify the options we use to mount NFS so that it doesn't hang. Speaking with Tim, I think he was hesitant about that because the options would, quote unquote, do a lazy unmount. And what that ends up doing is actually not doing the unmount and just promising that when it's possible, it'll do the unmount. And that may break assumptions that we're making about the system. So we need to be very careful about that.
I'm guessing that what Wamin was actually talking about was doing the NFS mount with interruptible or soft. I mean, where
NFS
defaults to hard, which means it will retry, the kernel will retry forever and will never return. Whereas if you mount with, what is it, soft, the kernel will throw back, what is, I don't remember, busy or retry or one of those retries rather than hang forever. So we could potentially mutate the NFS mount options we use so the kernel doesn't hang. Lots of applications get really, really ticked off when they do a file system operation and it returns errors other than those listed on the like read or write man page, which is why screwing with those options can be potentially dangerous to applications. But that is a way to stop the kubelet from hanging, but then it might break the people who are actually using NFS. So I don't think that's the best solution, but it does help stop the kubelet from hanging.
Yeah, I just need to say that if you do soft mount, that's a potential data corruption.
Just like if, you know, I'm not so against all these problems, but I'm just saying, would that be possible? We provide this flexibility to the end user, so let them decide whether that is something they want to choose.
So the mount options PR, it's been out for a while, and I think the big concern there is about punching a hole in our abstraction layer. We expose an API. Do we want to get into the business of saying that there is an unverified blob of options that will be passed through? We don't do any verification on it, and we're just going to pass it through.
We do the verification. So the API will be taken in, and they'll be validated when we, you know, accept the API.
Yeah.
So the question was, do you want to have this variable involve over releases?
So the thing is, these options would be specific to the volume plugin, right? Yes. So now you need to do verification per plugin, and it's technically feasible. We could extend the API to a verifier for the mount options that are passed in. The API server, when it sees one of these fields, it can invoke theoretically the volume plugin that's responsible and ask it to validate the options and reject options it doesn't support. But we should take it to the thread itself. I think there's open design questions that we need to address here.
Hi guys, just my 2 cents on this. I agree with rootfs. You know, in the environments which I have seen in NFS, people are they make it work. Right now, if I can't even choose version 3, version 4, that's a problem. I mean, this is just my 2 cents.
It sounds like, are we trying to solve everyone's problems all at once? I mean, should we basically have an out-of-box solution?
I'm basically saying if I expected NFS to work with Kubernetes, I would basically say that NFS plugin should basically honor options. Just NFS version 3, version 4 to be able to mount UDP or TCP. So and the other part of the equation, NFS is hard mounted or it has a timeout.
So basically, it sounds like in generally Kubernetes, it feels like we want to have a good out of the box, you don't have to think about it experience, and then we need to have, you know, an advanced power user experience. It sounds like, is there really an out of the box experience with NFS, or is everyone who's going to be touching it, we have to assume is going to be a power user with their own wants and needs and desires? You know, that's my first question.
Yeah, so the best is ask the NFS guys, ask the EMC guys, why do they have all these knobs on all the NFSs?
No. The NFS by its nature is knobs. My question is like, you know, Steve, Brad, the people I know who are really, really tight with NFS, you know, who deal with customers all the time on these things. Is there any customer who comes to NFS and doesn't expect to have to and want to turn all the knobs themselves?
They actually request to turn the knobs. And the problem is we don't give them the knobs.
I know, I get that. That's the second part of where I was going to get to. So is there any, like, is the number of customers for NFS who don't want to have to think about knobs just so small that it's not even someone we should be talking to, and instead we should just focus on being able to make the command line, like to expose the knobs to the users in a way that's like simple and clear?
So the reality is, like, they never want to think about the knobs, but they go and try to use it, and something breaks, and they go have to tweak root squash or something else, and end up having to mess with jobs regardless. So like they don't want to, but they end up having to.
So can we come up with a reasonable set of sort of here's the out of the box what we've got, and then here's how to override them? Is that what we have today? And do we have a reasonable set for the first case?
Yeah. So I think that's what Wellman's chasing at, is like what we have right now is probably a reasonable set of default options. And if we had the ability to adjust knobs, we could probably adjust knobs and wouldn't require a code fix. We could toy around with, mount options to make, to get past this issue.
Do you think there's is NFS structured enough that anything but a mapping of string to strings is what we can use, or are we really kind of stuck with that? In options,
we have the regex. Regex to validate the options, and we only suppose a limited number of options, so that could be doable.
It wouldn't be great, but we could, right? I mean, we could have a set of options that we support and validate for. It would have to be constantly maintained as new features are added or things change.
So then the question is whether each one of these options would then introduce a new field in each one of these volume plugins, or do we just have a generic field that captures all the volume plugins and we do validation on as a blob, one field?
My opinion on this is it's kind of crazy to try to validate this because it's impossible to say that these options are going to work or not. Now you can say like this isn't a valid option, but by just taking on the burden of validation, you're saying that there's a pretty good hope that works in its own.
I view a lot of the storage work we do in Kubernetes as kind of matchmaking applications to storage backends. And, since we don't really control those storage backends quite a bit, validating is really, really hard. Users are going to create their own.
Yeah, the whole reason you've got all these options is that NFS morphed over years and years. Then you have different vendor implementations, and some of the specs are so loose that you could conceivably at certain eras have things you deemed compliant that were arguably compliant to what the written spec was, but still wouldn't talk to the other end.
So I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry. I'm tired, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
But if you put these options there, you're also going to be obligated to explain what they mean. So there's a big documentation load in putting this there too, because I don't know, I'm not the NFS expert. I heard your request to maybe get a training guy, and within Dell EMC we have those guys, but I'm not that guy. I'm going to see what I can do, but my experience is that NFS isn't easy. Even within the hallways of one single vendor, it's not easy to get the stuff to work just automatically out of the box.
So, okay, can we make this a P0, not bug, but like actually a feature for 1.6? Something that I think it fits into the idea of the refinement, release, and planning anyway. Not make this something that we kick the can on. And it's not so much as fixing things that are wedged, but addressing the options issues that Wamin has been pushing for, I think, quarters anyway. And it sounds like Wamin should probably be, I feel always bad when I'm like, oh, why don't you look in this? Why don't you look on that? I'm not, everyone's boss or anything. But it feels like Wamin has a lot of investment in this already. Do you want to, would that be appropriate, like Brad and Wamin, to have him make this sort of like his feature for 1.6 and we make sure it gets reviewed and make sure it gets the attention that it needs?
Yes. Yep. We'll look at it. I think Wamin even has proposals in mind for this already.
I know he does. And I think that because of where we were with dynamic provisioning and with testing and with a bunch of other things, we have not given it the attention it deserves. And I think that time is past. And I feel like we really need to delve deeper into this for 1.6. And I think we should have the time to do so.
Just to be clear, are you guys okay with string and not validating every option? And is this something
we'll need to discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm more open to it than I used to be, but let's see if we can think about anything possibly better.
As a follow-up, do we want this just in NFS, or is this something we want across the entire volume plugin set?
I think it should be a solution that we can apply across. Maybe we could start with NFS, but we should design it so that it's something that's extensible beyond NFS.
It needs to be generic. Honestly, this is something where I want to throw it by the at Google. The way we arrange this is that Tim Hawkin is our Uber TL for infrastructure. And so this is something where it doesn't just get applied to storage. It's also things that we're seeing in networking and some things in the node team. So I wouldn't mind throwing this past his desk and saying, hey, Tim, you must look at this. And, you know, I think he'll be able to carve time out for it.
All right, guys, we are way over time today. Is it okay if we call this? Everybody okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we'll pick up in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.